Welcome everybody to this LT Innovate webcast on reshaping remote work and meetings with linguistic AI. We're organizing these webcasts to focus on the value that language technologies can bring to specific user communities. And today we're going to address, of course, a subject that has been very close to all of us in these times of remote working and organizing only virtual meetings like this one and so on. So today will hopefully be something will allow us all to learn something new about how our technologies can support our work in the future, what new developments we will have, and new ways of working together, meeting together more efficiently. I'm very pleased to have with us 4 distinguished speakers from, first of all, an important organization where many people, as you know, the European Commission, where obviously many people are working in a remote context. Marc Bertillom will tell us about his current experience in supporting these Commission employees and collaborators in terms of deploying, in particular, interpretation. That's a department for which he's coming, but anyway, he will introduce himself in a minute. And then we have 3 speakers from industry who will be addressing different components, technological components, and how they can contribute to the subject, how they can facilitate our working and meeting in virtual situations. So what I wanted to say apart from that is obviously, first of all, to thank everybody for participating. This meeting is going to be as interactive as possible. So we're inviting participants to take part in the meeting, to ask questions in particular. So we would like you to use, for that purpose, the chat function and to submit your questions. At any point, you can submit questions. You can also make comments. And once we reach the second part of the meeting, I'll go through the chat and we will pick out the questions or points that you have made, and we will ask our panel to react to them. Besides of that, I would also like to say that, as always, we're very keen to have feedback on our webinars in terms of how good you find them, how interesting you find them, suggestions that you may have for their improvement and so on. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with us and to let us know. And right now on the screen, you will see the email at which you can reach us most easily. Okay, that was for my short introduction. I would now like to open the floor to our first speaker, Marc Bertillom from the European Commission, where he is working in the Director General for Interpretation in a support function that is specifically linked to IT developments and the support to management and core processes. So Marc, the floor is yours. We're very happy to have you with us today. If you want to now also share your screen, I have to stop first of all sharing mine. Okay.
Yes.
So
I will try to share my own screen. Yes. Do you see my screen? Because I can't see anyone anymore.
Yes, it is there now.
Very good. Very good. So thank you, Philippe. Merci, Philippe, for this very kind word and for extending this invitation to Carlos Alegria, my acting Director General. And I'm very pleased to be here with you. And as you said, Philippe, so I'm the head of the unit in charge of the information system supporting interpretation, the management of interpretation, but more broadly, I was tasked a few years ago to lead the activities around digital transformation. And I'm particularly interested, and I mean, I work quite a lot these days on things like speech services, speech recognition, and how to modernize the way interpreters are preparing for their meetings and actually working in meetings. So I'm very pleased to hear from the co-hosts of this meeting on how they see the reshaping remote work and meeting with linguistic AI. I will start with a few graphs, a few charts I take from the annual activity report of my DG, which my team is actually responsible for as well, not only IT, but the reporting and management plan. So I think these 4 graphs will actually illuminate how we went through this major disruption which happened in March. You can see here the interpretation output and the comparison between 2019 2020. The iSlot, okay, don't bother with that. It's a unit we use to calculate actually this output and to charge our external client, like the Council of Ministers. So it's not really important here. But what you can see is, of course, the dramatic drop of interpretation when the lockdown was decided, and the service actually came to almost a complete standstill for quite a long time. And what you can see, it's a very slow recovery after the week 20, which is basically end of May, the beginning of June, where the Commission organized a major international conference for the donors for the vaccine, the research on vaccines. And here it was the first time, June the 4th, that Interaxio, a platform, was used to provide simultaneous conference interpreting in meetings. And here you can see the slow uptake of Interaxio, which start to kick in after this week 20. But of course, the output is much lower than it was the year before, and 2021 will obviously be a second year with a much lower output. And by assumption, like everybody's assumption, is that it is highly unlikely that conference interpreting will reach the level it had. I mean, the traditional conference interpreting in physical meetings, it won't reach the level it had before until a long time, and if it does actually reach again this level. So the second graph is actually the evolution in the meeting types we had. So you can see the third 3 months it was physical, and here you can see again the slow uptake of hybrid meeting, what we call hybrid meetings, which is the participants are participating from a remote location, and the interpreters are actually in meeting rooms. They are not interpreting from remote, from home, but they are in a meeting room, in a booth with screens, and interpret in a meetings where participants are from a remote location. Why? And I will go back to that. It's in order to minimize quality issues in the provision of interpretation. So this is the second graph, and here a third graph, which is I would say the counterpart. I mean, it's the first 2 graphs was the drop in interpretation, traditional interpretation, and this strive to offer an alternative way of providing interpretation. Here you have the complete opposite, which is Commission DGs scrambling to equip themselves with meeting rooms suitable for hosting virtual meetings, using platforms, using Teams, Webex, you name it. It's also the sign of the accelerated rollout of Microsoft 365 and Teams, which is actually an additional layers of Microsoft 365. And you have to consider, I'm not from Digit, I mean the IT department of the Commission, but nevertheless, I should mention in the context of this graph that in 2 weeks' time, Digit has to completely revamp the way they organized their own architecture for remote working, and they had to shift 32,000 people to telework in 2 weeks' time. So it was a complete revamping of the architecture, the infrastructure. So it's part of this broader picture. It was not foreseen that we reach the milestone of 300 meeting spaces equipped for virtual meetings at the end, actually, or the very beginning of 2021. So this is the third graph. And here, a fourth graph, which is also very illuminating in this context, which is the number of requests, I mean, not tickets, but the calls to the helpline we have for the organization of virtual conferencing. And here you can see how steep the learning curve is for everyone in the Commission. It's really striking to see people again scrambling to organize virtual events and a bit struggling as well to implement good practices and you know, in this area. So in a nutshell, I would say what how we assess today what has happened in the past 12 months. It's first that challenges remain very significant in the way of moving to a complete remote way of organizing meetings and works. The first issue is, of course, what I would call, I don't know whether the word is perfectly accurate in English, but the proliferation of tools. There are so many tools across institutions, because all institutions have their own requirements, their business needs, but also security requirements. So there are differences across institutions, across member states. The German presidency had its own habits, and the Portuguese presidency, I don't know about the upcoming French presidency, and you have habits. I mean, people are used to Webex because Webex is Cisco, and Cisco, it's providing tools for large companies. So you have all these, I would say, idiosyncrasies which led to a proliferation of tools through which it's very difficult for interpreters and staff to actually navigate. And on top of that, all of these, the tool providers have, of course, upgraded their tools as they worked and that they got feedback. So it's very challenging, this part. So we really need standards to mainstream remote working, to build integration. For instance, very concrete example, we provide interpretation in this hybrid meeting through Interaxio, which was selected after a test of different platforms. But the information system we manage in my team, which is basically to hire and assign interpreters, it's completely disconnected. So all the work which is done to build the team, to create the team with all the languages, has to be manually re-encoded in Interaxio, because there is no integration, and it can't be, because there are so many tools, and very few tools offer APIs or services to build this kind of integration. So it's a huge workload on top of what people have been doing. It's the opposite of actually digitalizing, I would say. And we have to build trust as well. I mean, privacy, security, there were a lot of issues, questions around Zoom at some point. Now Zoom, it's considered as a secure tool, but so standards, trust, performance. This is, as far as we know, we can see in my DG, the performance doesn't yet meet the need of a large organization beyond crisis mode. We have, I mean, horror stories of unreliable internet connections from remote users. The higher they are, I mean, the more VIPs they are, the less they care sometimes. So it's maybe very disturbing and unsettling for people working in this meeting. The quality of audiovisual equipment, and the digital skills of participants, how you organize the meetings. A lot of work it needs still to be done before remote working is really up to the standards we expect beyond crisis mode for the post-COVID world, I would say. And of course, last but not least, we need to invest and invest in infrastructure, in home offices. If someday interpreters are to be allowed to provide interpretation from home, which is not the case today, then we should be, I mean, certain that they have the proper equipment, a fast internet connection, and so forth. The tools, the staff know-how, the integration with IT tools. So everything requires a lot of investment. But as we say in risk assessment, every risk is also an opportunity. All these changes are obviously here to stay. I think that what we will have is a drive towards carbon neutrality. I think beyond digital, as far as I'm concerned, what I see as the key driver for all this change and the shift towards remote working is clearly the commitment from large organizations like the Commission to moving towards carbon neutrality. And the Commission is currently preparing a communication to lay down an action plan or roadmap towards carbon neutrality. And based on a study which was commissioned by DG Climat a few months ago, which actually highlighted that the key factor, it won't be a surprise for anybody in this room, the key factor behind carbon dioxide emissions is, of course, travels, outbound travels. I mean, I don't know, FEDER, FEOGA inspectors traveling to a member state for an audit mission, and inbound mission, which means meetings, physical meetings, people coming to the conference centers, the meeting rooms for physical meetings. So it's 43% according to this study of the carbon dioxide emissions. So it's clear that the very clear political commitment from the Commission to go carbon neutral in 2030 will mean less travels, less physical meetings, less commuting. It's the second driver behind emissions. So physical meetings will definitely resume, but they will, in my view, never go back to the level they had before. There will be a mix, but they will be at a much lower level than before. The second thing is that this crisis, or this shift towards remote working, has been a great accelerator of digital transformation. As far as I am concerned, we could make, tremendous progress in the project I launched a while ago on multilingual speech transcription, speech services, because of COVID, because people were actually requesting this type of service. They had recordings of meetings and they wanted to have transcription, subtitling, live subtitling. So, and interpreters were actually unemployed. Basically, you saw that in my first slide. So I had a pool of language experts ready, available, and ready to work on other things. And actually, it led to more interpreters' engagement. When I launched this project, I was met with skepticism at best and hostility at worst, which is you try to kill us, you will replace the human linguist by robots and algorithm. This is no longer the case. They now understand that there is a lot of potential, and it's a new job actually for language experts. And we are even working with the University of Ghent on, providing speech recognition in the booth to identify figures, terms, difficult terminology, and possibly in the future named entities, acronym, nouns, and so forth. So it's a big accelerator of digital transformation. And in any case, in any event, I can see in the audience that there are colleagues from other institutions. European institutions need multilingual communication. It's provision in the treaty. The need to have meetings where communication is facilitated by interpretation. This need will stay. But conference interpreting will need to reinvent itself, reconciling the need to have multilingualism in meetings and this new context of remote working, virtual meetings, and so forth. And this reinvention, as it were, has just started because we are just at the beginning of this process. Again, just to conclude here, I think that the commitment to carbon neutrality will be a key driver in the decade to come. And a lot of changes will come on the back of this shift towards carbon neutrality in this area. So I think I'm done as far as I'm concerned. I'm happy to take any questions, of course, from the audience.
Thank you very much, Mark. As I said, we will have the questions coming in the second part of our meeting.
Yes.
So now we're moving immediately to our next speaker, who is George Barra, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at RWS SDL.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you, Mark, for the overview of what's happening at the European Commission. And SDL, which is now part of RWS Holdings, is facing some of the same challenges. And I'll circle back to that. As we are one of the biggest translation companies in the world, we obviously have a big pool of interpreters that needed to change the way they work starting the early 2020. But I'll switch briefly to the main point of today's webinar, which is linguistic artificial intelligence, or linguistic AI, and just spend 1 minute explaining what that is. I mean, in short, for those familiar with the terms, it simply relates to natural language processing, or it relates to software creating using artificial neural networks, and more recently, deep learning. Basically, we call it AIs because it's simple. Nobody likes to call out the full name: natural language processing, natural language understanding, artificial neural networks. But in essence, it's software that can replicate human cognitive processes such as language transformation and language understanding. And this is how we regard linguistic AI. It's basically a set of tools, a set of software tools, a set of technologies that can process language. By processing language, I mainly refer to speech recognition, basically speech to text. It can transform language in the sense of translating it, which is automated translation, which is what RWS and SDL provide. And of course, there's language understanding, which means extracting actionable information automatically from content, or text analytics, how it is referred in other instances, which is what our partner Expert AI can do. So with that introduction, I'm going to actually tell you why I think we have reached a stage where technology needs to complement and supplement the need for translation and interpreting, especially for the context of remote working. Well, it's mainly because and I'm speaking here mostly about machine translation because that's what SDL does. It's because the technology has reached a good enough quality to be rolled out in production across a multitude of use cases. So if you look at machine translation, which goes back to 1970s, which were simple rule-based systems and can do translation from just a couple of languages using complex linguistic rules that were basically developed by teams, large teams of linguists. The machine translation technology only went into production in the years 2000, and that's when machine learning became a thing. And I actually worked for the first company that released the commercial machine translation technology into the commercial space. It was Language Weaver, a company from the US that was acquired by SDL, which is now part of RWS. So I have a background in machine translation up to when it was first launched as a commercial solution in Europe. And there were still little steps. There was slow adoption. There was a lot of worry about quality. It was a worry about replacing translators, the same as Mark mentioned, that there's a worry that technology is now going to replace interpreters. And in fact, the industry proved that it's not the case. It's just a productivity tool. It's something that would help translators, that would help us understand content where the need of a professional translator is not really required or not possible. And more recently, with the introduction of deep learning and then neural networks, we ended up with a technology which we call neural machine translation that provides very high quality. In some cases, it provides quality comparable to that of human translators. There are some recent tests that have been published by independent industry associations that prove that for some use cases, it's almost impossible to determine if content was translated automatically or it was translated by human beings. Of course, that's not the case across all the use cases, all the types of content, but it's just a proof that artificial intelligence that deals with speech, with natural language processing, has reached maturity. And you can see that even if you read the news on AI, most of the more rapid advancements are happening in the natural language processing space. You see the launch of algorithms like transformers, like Google BERT, like SDL's neural machine translation technology. They happen very rapidly and they have significant impact. For us, for example, it's even amazing that we are now managing to translate from languages that we regard as complex, like Russian, Chinese, character-based languages, which were difficult to deal with in the past. Now we see near perfect translation quality even for these complicated languages, which for us is a proof that this technology is mature, is ready enough to be deployed as a digital assistant for a multitude of use cases, including remote interpretation and other use cases. And circling back to what Mark was describing, the interpreting departments at SDL and RWS face the same changes. Things have definitely changed. Virtual remote interpreting using tools like Interactio are now becoming the new normal. Everyone needs to get used to them. Everyone is working from home. But it's not that simple, right? There's a multitude of tools. There's a lack of integration. There's a different way of working. The requirements are not just for interpreting, but providing post-meeting transcripts, notes, things that interpreters didn't have to traditionally do in the past. I am having calls with our interpreters team, and they are now required to take part in company business meetings that happen online, things that weren't required in the past, right? And there are complex issues about how do you do the interpretation? Do you do simultaneous? Do you do consecutive? What tools to use? How to connect your web conferencing system with your remote interpretation system? What do you use to do the live captioning afterwards? So we have moved into a fully online way of working, but the technology hasn't moved as fast as it should. So there are still challenges. Now, with every challenge obviously comes an opportunity, and the way we see remote working and consuming content, it has first of all a time management component, but it also has a multilingual component, as Mark really pointed out. And the time management component mostly refers to how we do about our daily work. And myself included, I have a lot of meetings every day. I use a multitude of conferencing systems. Some meetings are longer than they should. They are now at some odd times because we're working on with different teams from different time zones. I work from home. I have kids. Sometimes they're around, obviously. So there is an issue of burnout, right? There is an issue of having too many meetings, on concentrating to those meetings, of extracting the really useful information from that meetings in an environment that's not ideal. You're not in the office. You don't have your conference room ready. You don't have a face-to-face meeting. Things are more difficult. At the same time, when you're working in a multilingual organization, or when you're working in a multilingual public sector organization like the European Commission, everything is multilingual. So there's an issue of how do you make your meetings feasible when you have people from different countries without the need of a live interpreter, because that can become costly. There's an issue of resources being available whenever you need one. Few web conferencing systems actually offer a means to provide live transcriptions. I think none of them provides a mean to do also a translation of that live transcription. So as I said, the technologies that we have and that we use on a day-to-day basis, on one hand, are basically overwhelming us. So we need technology to solve the time management issue that we have. We need to be able to quickly analyze video recordings such as webinars without watching them entirely for a full hour to make the best of our time. We can, for example, we should be able to view recorded webinars or even live webinars with live automated transcription and captioning, because that's something that is easier to consume, right? You have your attention focused on the video and on the text rather than also having the audio, which cannot be feasible, especially in some parts of the day if you're working from home. So there are a lot of issues that we've identified, and I've identified personally working from home for more than a year now, that haven't been solved by the industry yet. And this is where the potential lies, actually. This is where I think artificial intelligence, the technology that I mentioned before, speech-to-text, machine translation, and text analytics can come to the help. This is where I think if we bridge these technologies with what the humans actually really expect from remote working and from interacting with these technologies, we can bring some really significant benefits to how we engage with remote working conditions. For example, machine translation can be something that can be easily used to translate any type of company communications, whether it's internal documentation, emails, chat messages, at acceptable quality, at high speed, and with low costs. So basically, you break the language barrier whenever you deal with written content. At the same time, since we're speaking about webinars or recorded videos or web conferences such as this one, then speech-to-text can play a significant role to perform automated transcription of the audio of every speaker in whatever language is needed, and then translate it automatically, essentially generating a real-time subtitling of a video in your language. That would be amazing, right? It's quite something that we have tested, to be honest, together with partners. It does work, and there's still some little steps to be done to release something that could make a major impact in the industry. And of course, there's also the issue of synthesizing this type of meetings, whether you have live meetings that you've recorded, whether you have content that you mix in, emails, communication, the size of the content, the volume, the variety of sources can become overwhelming, right? What's the point in having 40, 50 meetings on a specific team per year if you don't if you're not able to synthesize and properly understand the main concepts from those meetings, to have meeting notes produced efficiently. And this is where hybrid natural language understanding comes into place. This is where I think, as a third step from that linguistic AI technology overview that I've described, can come in handy, because after all the content is processed, after all the language element is transformed, as I mentioned, you can then make sense of it. You can identify what was the actual usable information from those meetings. You can have summaries of those meetings. You can have a mix and match of what has been discussed in a meeting with previous emails, or even maybe with a repository of documentation. That would be quite amazing. I haven't seen anything like that yet. It's just maybe an idea, a concept, but the technology that can do all these cognitive processes automatically by using artificial intelligence is there. It is available, and that's why we have this these companies here in the webinar today, is to talk about each and every single aspect that I've mentioned here. And with that, I'm gonna hand over to my other colleagues. And yeah, if you want to know more about machine translation or neural machine translation, you can just go to the link on the website and find out more, the one that I'm sharing on the screen right now.
Many thanks, George. Enrico, you are next.
Thank you, Philippe. Thanks for being here. I'm happy twice, since today it was really my pleasure to be here, because I'm really living in a remote working scenario since I am in quarantine since 2 weeks, and so due to COVID-19. So with my family, and therefore I am experiencing every day what it means to be at home, not be able to go out, and being from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Working with lots of conference calls, video calls, and which is really very hard to do. And I really understand, and I'm really realizing what is the help of the technology we have been working with by using them today, all of them every day, and benefiting from them. So we see that there is, and I go to our view, and what I would like to share with you today is the way how a company like Ceda55, which is focused on speech recognition solution, is approaching this this scenario, was approaching even before the emergency, because we already saw that there was a shift from not just a digitalization process, but to what is now called, with this new buzzword, datafication. So that is to say that we suddenly went from face-to-face meetings to live meetings, to video calls, from live events to webinars, from trainings in the classroom to digital masterclass. So everything, lots of information around us that have been digitalized. And we really can have the opportunity to share this information. I introduce my cat that visits me now. And we can really benefit by introducing the artificial intelligence and speech to text, because as also George said, this can help a lot in being more productive, and also to facilitate inclusion, which is not irrelevant, and the possibility to share easily and better information, even within the same organization. So some points were already touched by Mark and George here, but anyway, we see there are many aspects where artificial intelligence, and for us, automatic speech recognition, where we are expert about, can bring in terms of benefits. And here is what we would like to share. So this is a matter of, transforming not just speech into text on our side, but into a text which is valuable. So if we are able, and if we have the possibility to work properly, put together a pipeline where the speech becomes a text. This text is a data and is an asset where we can apply analysis, we can summarize, we can extract information, we can dive into this information, we can integrate with other applications, then we create value. We create value, and it's important also on how we approach each of these steps into this pipeline. And of course, I would like also to touch another important aspect, which is the security and the privacy and the way we approach this data. It's now very, very common and due to also to this emergency that everybody uses any platform. We know, I had also my kids that suddenly from a day to another were moved from the classroom to a platform. And there were lots of issues related to the privacy, to what was called bombing, and other security aspects that needs to be also addressed in this area. And this is also something where we are very focused in the day-to-day activity. Which are the challenges from the speech perspective? There are many challenges. Many challenges. I also read already a question about this on what is related to speeches. So there are challenges related to the audio quality. Mark already said that there is in all of us not the same level of digital, smartness, let's say, so digital preparation. Therefore, there are people that suddenly moved from the physical meeting to the virtual meeting and were expecting to switch on the camera, and maybe they don't know where is the microphone, and then you don't hear anything from the other side of the video conference. There are issues related to background noise, loud environments, overlapping on speeches, dialects. So these are the real challenges that for who works into speech recognition have to be addressed. And our team, our language experts, researchers do work on this to address properly each of them. Maybe working on suppression of noise, background noise, to identify who is speaking, to be able to have a minute of the meeting where you have also the information about who is saying what, synchronization of audio and text, which is another impressive feature. And here I would like to also to share with you some use cases where the speech technologies have been introduced. The first two even before the COVID-19 emergency, and the last one goes, the KPMG one goes more on the adoption of this solution to help people that before in an office space were able, even if hearing impaired, to participate to the meetings to colleagues, suddenly when they had to work remotely were completely excluded from the exchange of information, from understanding really what they were deciding. And we were able to provide her with a solution that in real time can generate the transcription of what is said during the video conference, and therefore have at the end also of the meeting the report and have in real time idea of what they were discussing about. Italian Chamber of Deputies, they started already in 2015 a digital transformation process where the main core, the focus was speech-to-text adoption for a productivity need. But this decision was also very helpful in the last 12 months, where suddenly they had to be able to continue doing the reporting activities, but with people working remotely. And this was made without any interruption. And finally, British Library. Within the Save Our Records project, this is the statement of the lead of the project. where they are, since 2018, they were starting recording meetings, radio stations for collecting all the heritage of the UK record radio stations. And there was the risk that with COVID-19, this was going to be stopped. This finally was possible thanks to adoption of speech-to-text, recording a speech-to-text, and possibility to dive into this information. I just want only to focus very briefly on this, on an ethical, on the aspect about how humans and this technology and the relationship with them. This is something that also George addressed. And yes, at the same time, we do believe, and our day-to-day mission is always to consider that these technologies can be of support, can be an auxilium to the human activities. There is no intention, there is no way we do consider that these technologies can replace the work of the humans. And CEDAT-85 itself is an example. We started 35 years ago by providing reporting services. 15 years ago, we introduced into our organization speech-to-text, and we didn't fire anybody of our transcribers. But on the other side, we were able to introduce and to evolve and to have more innovative services. Just concluding with this statement, which I like, maybe only Maurizio at this table knows Piero Angela, but it is very well known in Italy as a scientist, a journalist. This is also, and I think, and I totally agree on this, where we say that new technology can need always of people that doesn't know only to use them, but are also able to invent and manage. And this is, I think, is the opportunity that comes from these technologies, from artificial intelligence, and the right way to use and to introduce maybe even in our day-to-day life. Thank you.
Thanks, Enrico. And with this quote, the transition is made to Maurizio Mencarini, who will be the next speaker.
Okay, so thanks, Philip. And can you see my screen? Yes, I think so. And so I arrive as the last element of the chain after these three great presentations from Mark, George, and Enrico, just to, let's say, wrap up what we are doing with artificial intelligence around linguistic problems. So we deal typically with natural language understanding. And of course, I do not need to say again what you have already heard today, but you know better than me. So with the COVID-19, let's say there has been an explosion of virtual meetings. This is the experience of everyone. We stay in our home, we stay in our room, and we have just one call after the other, back to back. So Teams, Zoom, but all the other provider, Webex. So today we are on Webex. Really have increased a lot their activity during the past months. But generally speaking, it's not just only a matter of meetings and webinars. Since we work with text, we work with documentation. What we have seen is an explosion of the needs to automate activity around document analysis and text analysis. And it seems that this thing is not going to finish, because many companies are already planning to go on with this remote working activity, because there are employees that can organize better than their personal life in this way. And of course, for a company, there will be a lot of saving in terms of space, offices, traveling. I got my last plane for work. I think 1 year ago here in Italy. Probably Italy was the first country to go in lockdown in Europe. So yes, probably my last plane was February of last year. So this is something that we need to deal now, but it's something that we will have to deal also in the next future. And so apart from meetings, what has been found is that there are a lot of more emails exchanged just because we are not able to speak with our colleagues. So really, this situation is boosting all the, let's say, needs of digitalization and digital transformation for all the companies in any market, in any situation, even the, let's say, more resistant to change. So this is the situation. We have talked about the needs to translate all the information in different languages in order to allow people speaking different languages to interact between them. We have spoken about the needs of speech to text. So in order to transform in text what is just oral communication, and we can add a lot of other things. The need to scan and OCR documents in order to get digital text again. So what we are dealing with as a company specialized in natural language understanding is the need to understand what is written inside text. That could be the minute of a meeting, can be a lot of different things. So this is what we are doing, and what we are providing is the possibility to really enter in the content and extract all the relevant information. And I want to do a very simple test. Since we are arriving to the, let's say, final part of our session, I would like to stop with the slides. Here we are. I'm just explaining how it is possible to understand text. So how to understand the different meaning of words according to the content. This is exactly what we provide. But I would like to make something more interactive and stop the presentation and pass to a simple example. I've taken from the European Union website the minute of a meeting. I've just taken one, and here there is a statement from different countries. This is already, let's say, organized in text, but this is something that could come from a speech to text process. It could come from a translation process, since probably the Polish and the Hungarian people were speaking in their language, as well as the Danish one, the Belgian one, and so on. So I take these statements from Belgium and see what we can do with natural language understanding. Just for a matter of time, I've already prepared, let's say, the text that was in the minute with the Belgian statement, and I analyze it. So the idea is to have the possibility to understand what the Belgian guy said, identify the main concept, but also identify who said what and which are the relations. So, for example, Belgium, in this case, Belgium is a country, but of course, in the meaning of the document, it is a person saying something. So, Belgium therefore welcomes the recital of a council decision, or welcomes the adoption of a council decision. So, imagine that in the future, you want to find the meeting where Belgium let's say, welcome the adoption of a decision, or where Maurizio said to George that they need to start a new activity, or Philippe asked to Enrico to start a new project for the speech to text part. So having the possibility to deal with language, to deal with all the let's say, linguistic stuff that is produced in this period across web meetings, but also across emails, document exchange, a lot. So, and having the possibility to transform everything in something that is tangible, that is manageable by a machine, that can be categorized So in this example, for example, I'm categorizing what has been said in this document as human rights, international law, and so on. This is just an example. So this can give you really a lot of possibility and make your, let's say, the adoption of the AI in the management of the information produced in this specific period really more efficient, more useful for the business. So I would stop here and go back to the slides where I just reproduced the demo, and of course, Philippe, you will share the documentation with all the participants. But I would like to stop here with this message. So the idea is today to see how it is possible to deal with what is produced during remote working by putting together, as George presented in his first slide, the capability to understand in different languages, the capability to transform everything in text, from speech to text, the capability to understand what is written in text. And this can open a lot of new opportunities.
Thank you very much, Maurizio, also for this very hands-on example that shows things in a very practical way. So now the time has come for everybody to join in the discussion and ask questions. I would like to encourage you once again to use the chat function. I've already launched a few questions in there. We'd like to have some feedback from you, so please have a look at the questions, try to respond to them, and also ask your questions to the speakers. I see that immediately we have one statement from Hannah Riley, who made a point about speech to text being very much in demand these days. But also underlining that, of course, everything depends on the implementation, and if it's poorly implemented, despite of having some visibility, people might ultimately reject it if it doesn't deliver according to expectations. On that basis, I'd like to actually start with ask a first question to everybody, and maybe first of all to Marc Bertillom from a needs side, and then to the three other speakers from a delivery side. Starting from the situation we're finding ourselves in terms of remote working. Where do you see short-term developments arising, hanging fruits that you see becoming available? Or as far as you're concerned, Marc, what are your needs short-term, and then towards the medium term, what would you like to have? And then the other three speakers more in terms of what they're able to deliver against these needs.
Yes, actually, what we are seeing across commission services, and I will a bit depart from the word of interpretation here, it's a shift towards collaborative tools. So collaboration is the key word, and I think George mentioned that, how to increase productivity, efficiency, how to manage time, how to reduce the huge amount of emails, which at the very beginning of the crisis has increased, actually, leading to burnouts and, so I would say that it's the low-hanging fruit is rolling out an ecosystem of collaborative tools. And here, of course, Microsoft 365 has a clear advantage because it's you have really a range of apps which are integrated natively into each other. And then on top of that, of course, I see very interesting development. I think it's Maurizio who mentioned that as well, or Enrico as well, is to dig into this data to extract meaning. So it would be to perform search, to have a document analysis. So that would be, I would say, not low-hanging fruit, but medium-term objective. But I think really now what we need is to move towards collaborative tools across the board. And I think it goes hand in hand with something which will happen in the Commission post-COVID, which is telework being a standard way of working. So it's not telework as something you grant to somebody who has to reconcile private and professional life. It's a normal way of working. And I think it will have profound implication on the way people work. It will create demand. I liked, I think it's Enrico's quote at the end of his presentation, that technology is also for those who invent ways to use technologies and to manage it. So I think what is fascinating, as far as I'm concerned, is to see this rollout of collaborative tool, the fact that telework will become the standard way of working, and here we will see new demands, drive for new products, and we'll see where it goes. But I think this is a process, and we are basically inventing as we walk. This is very much fascinating, the way things are moving.
Thanks, Mark. Who wants to start? George, Maurizio, Enrico?
So maybe since speech to text is specifically involved, yes, I think that on my side, I already shared which are the challenges. That, of course, and we are aware that there are lots of complications where we are dealing with speech, because there are lots of aspects that are independent very often from the technology itself. Just to give you a simple example is speech during a remote meeting, and the way we do here, each of the people attending to the meeting is strictly related to the microphone used by each of us during the meeting, the distance we speak from the microphone, and so on. So and the hardware we have. Also, Mark said in its presentation. So suddenly, when people were forced to work from home, I have my laptop. A colleague of mine doesn't have a laptop, maybe use a smartphone to do the video conferences. Then we have to use with a very different hardwares, very different devices, and this has an impact on what is the input that goes into the system. We are using a platform like Cisco Webex that is trying to solve these issues by introducing sophisticated software to enhance the quality of the experience, to reduce completely the background noise, to improve the quality of the audio for these reasons. So it is not only a matter of how a technology works. For what we can say on the other side, if we are able to have a good input, the challenges that we can have on the speech to text are also related to what we call the language models. That is to say, the lexicon that is used. So something is to talk about marketing, something else is to talk about financial, something else is also to talk about insurance and agriculture and so on. There is a wide range of terminologies, and today we can have very sophisticated general purpose systems that already are able to provide a good experience. But there is also the possibility to go into more vertical lexicon that can be applied to the specific context, which may be more humanistic, more scientific, or whatever. So these are also the differences, you know, the nuance that can be considered also from the user to adopt at the best technology, and not to expect anyway miracles. I think, and what I would like also to say, maybe like as a last statement, sorry, is that very often we consider that artificial intelligence is like intelligence, but it is not true, because human intelligence has likely for all of us some peculiarities, like the joint possibility to abstract and deduct, all the peculiarities related to the emotions, everything related to the self-awareness. These are all still peculiarities of the human intelligence. If we do not expect at the moment to have this kind of answers from the AI, then I think that we can properly use and start focusing on the benefit that can come from the adoption of these technologies. And the benefits are there.
I fully agree. It's a matter of expectations and outcomes. So because of the way the press tends to treat artificial intelligence, people expect unrealistic results from artificial intelligence, right? When in reality we need to crawl before we can run, and this is what we've seen also with machine translation. So you can't entirely replace a human translator or the work that a human does when it's interpreting, for example. But you can supplement its work, and you can take some processes and automate them to a good enough level. And what I mean is, just imagine you have a web call like this one, and there's somebody, let's say, speaking Japanese in the call, and he cannot really understand what we're talking. The ideal solution would be to have an interpreter doing simultaneous interpretation in Japanese, and that would be fine. But if you don't have that, you basically have nothing to offer. On the contrary, you actually can offer an AI system that would transcribe and translate the content with good enough accuracy, let's say 85, 90%. That's already a significant gain. Those are the type of expectations that the industry should have, that the user should have, is to gain productivity, to solve problems in an innovative way with a good ROI, and basically that's how we need to position these type of technologies. And I'm going to be honest, I think the first major adopter is going to be the business industry, and only probably a couple of years after is going to be the large consumer base. We've seen from experience that automated live captioning or machine translation that were added in the past in tools like Skype, for example, or maybe now in Zoom, are still not really adopted properly by consumers because they are generally built, they don't solve a specific problem. And as Enrico said, they can't treat every possible type of language and vertical and domain at the same quality that a purpose-built, business-ready AI solution would do. And this is what our companies actually solve. They solve problems that are very specific to our customers.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, George. Also, let's say from the language understanding point of view, it's just exactly the same situation. So I will never say a customer that I can, with the technology I can understand 100%, with 100% of accuracy everything that is inside in the text. That is not possible, but that is not possible even for human. So what we have found in reality, that even processes that were completely managed manually by operator, you had some level of mistakes, because the productivity of a person is not the same in the morning and in the afternoon. There could be a lack of knowledge between different people. So that's exactly the situation. And we are not saying that we want to substitute a human being, but we are just saying that we can enhance and increase their productivity. We have recently worked on a project where people was needing to analyze complex documents, even 30 or 40 page documents, and extract information from there, and they were needing 58 minutes per document to extract everything. And now we have a process where instead everything is done automatically, and the operator just needs to validate the extraction. That means that is doing a more interesting job in 5 seconds instead that in 58 minutes. And, you know, it's another world. And as you said, in the example of the Japanese speaking guy, in one case, you are not even considering to have an interpreter because it would not be possible to have an interpreter for every call. And as I said before, instead, no one is thinking to use all the material produced during a meeting for further search, for create a knowledge base, for knowledge sharing, because no one is thinking to analyze it and understand what is written inside.
Right, thank you very much, Maurizio. So I guess basically, if I want to summarize what most of you, if not all of you, have actually said, we've got to aim for truly human-centered AI rather than pretending to replace the humans by AI. I can only concur with that on a daily basis as well. My encounters with AI, interacting, for example, with my telephone company this morning, made me come exactly to the same conclusion. So on these words, as we have already, I was just looking at my watch, we've already run over by more than 10 minutes. I'm afraid that we will have to conclude for today. It was a very interesting topic. Thank you very much to the 4 of you for participating in this discussion. I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with all of you, and I would also like to thank all our participants for joining us today. Thank you again, and goodbye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.